Recently, a stark warning letter circulated through the highest levels of the U.S. government regarding a sudden international development. The cause for alarm was immediate. Intelligence agencies realized that the world's most advanced defense networks possess a massive, glaring blind spot. India had quietly and successfully tested a hypervelocity weapon, challenging the established military balance in a single flight. For the U.S. and its allies, this launch was a signal that the global map they were working from was missing a major piece. For decades, foreign analysts viewed India through a dusty, historical lens, a nation they assumed was entirely dependent on imported technology. The global defense hierarchy operated under the assumption that top-tier military R&D was an exclusive, closed loop, restricted entirely to the US, Russia, and China. Look at modern radar arrays. These defensive networks are strictly calibrated to predict standard ballistic trajectories and highly predictable speeds. The fatal flaw in this global grid is physical limitation. Traditional radar systems simply cannot track objects that maneuver unpredictably at extreme hypervelocities. Washington and Beijing spent billions building defensive fortresses based on exactly who and what they thought could threaten them. India has now provided proof that those assumptions are obsolete. The specific operational capability of the new Indian missile is sustained atmospheric travel at Mach 8. While a standard ballistic missile follows a steady curve, an object at Mach 8 covers over 1.5 miles every second. Add a radar radius, the vehicle slips entirely through the threat detection window before the system can even register a target lock. Flying that fast inside the atmosphere generates a plasma sheath, a layer of superheated gas that normally incinerates aerial vehicles. To survive it, Indian engineers developed highly specialized materials capable of withstanding extreme thermal heat. This speed effectively moves the goalposts for defensive warfare. Current interceptor systems are mathematically designed for slower targets, leaving a capability gap that hasn't existed since the Cold War. The agencies responsible for this milestone are DRDO and ISRO. It marks a highly effective collaboration between India's domestic defense and space programs. They pooled decades of complex space launch telemetry and independent orbital research to build a completely indigenous system from the ground up. American and Chinese defense tests are heavily publicized and intensely scrutinized. India, however, managed the extreme logistical complexity of hiding this entire testing cycle from global satellite surveillance. The true shock to foreign intelligence circles is the proof that India can execute world-class complex engineering programs entirely in the shadows. The official United States response carried heavy geopolitical weight. Washington actively categorizing an Indian capability as a direct threat marks a severe recalculation of alliances. In Beijing, their sprawling intelligence apparatus was caught entirely off guard, officially deeming the development unexpected. This single successful test forces the Chinese military to rethink their baseline assumption of unquestioned regional dominance across Asia. Both superpowers were forced to pause their own bilateral rivalry to account for a third nuclear power they had consistently underprojected. The decades-long stalemate in the global arms hierarchy has broken. India has transitioned from a buyer of legacy Russian and Western hardware into a primary driver of bleeding-edge R&D. The political leadership is signaling to the world that this Mach 8 weapon is merely a foundational step in a much larger vision. It is the technological proof of Bharat rising, a systemic, cultural, and economic momentum positioning India as the undeniable third pillar of global power. India did not just build a faster missile, they built a new strategic landscape where future diplomacy and power will be dictated by the advancements of Bharat.